My name is Kevin Martin, and I wrote the book, Surviving the College Admissions Madness. And in it, I talk a lot about the college admissions madness and elite universities. But what is an elite university, and what is the scope of what I call the admissions madness? Also, how many families are applying to America's approximately top 50 or so universities? When I generalize about elite universities, I have in mind campuses for whom it is the majority of their applicants' first choice university. When admitted students decide to enroll somewhere, that is the yield in admissions jargon. Most top 50 universities yield somewhere between 40 and 50% of their applicants. The average yield rate for Ivy League universities, for example, is 64%. The most in-demand universities, like Harvard and Stanford, might enroll 75 to 80% of their admitted students. But highly selective doesn't always mean elite. Some universities, such as Miami and Tulane, might accept less than 25% of their students, qualifying them as technically highly selective. However, their yield rates are also low, somewhere between 20 and 30%. So a lower yield rate suggests that these are not the dream schools for most of their admitted students. Selected universities with lower yield rates contribute to the madness, but they're usually a second or third choice for most applicants. There's also many college ranking systems, which complicates what people mean when they say top 50. And debates about what qualifies as elite remain an open question, and one that's understandably going to shift over time. Nevertheless, elite universities are those with rising application numbers at a much higher rate than the national average. They're the campuses that occupy a central fixture in family conversations and in social media or Reddit. They're the campuses that vaguely constitute some sort of top 20 or top 50 that we often use in everyday speak, even if notions of a top school aren't about any particular ranking system or a best of list. For my book, Surviving the College Admissions Madness, I focused on 45 of the most in-demand public and private universities, 3/4 of which were those private schools, and then the other 11 were public research universities, places like the University of Texas at Austin, California, Berkeley, or Los Angeles, University of Virginia, and so on. And at these 45 universities, approximately 1.6 million applications were submitted for 279,000 acceptance offers. And those universities intended to enroll approximately 116,400 first-year students each year. The average admissions rate for public and private elite universities, based on this 45 campus data set, was only 17%, with the average admitted applicants receiving 2.4 admissions offers. Coveting these scarce spaces drives the admissions madness. An average of 2.4 elite university acceptances per applicant is misleading because most students will receive 0 offers. In contrast, a small pool of exceptional students will earn most of the admissions spaces. Said another way, there's approximately 22,000 Ivy League admissions offers. However, there are far fewer than 22,000 individual students occupying those acceptance spaces. If each student submits between 4 and 6 applications to these 45 institutions, between 270 and 400,000 families are navigating the elite college admission cycle each year. There are approximately 4.5 million seniors at American high schools each year. So broadly speaking, most of these 1.6 million applications to elite universities are submitted by students ranking within the top quarter of their schools. They overwhelmingly come from affluent suburbs. And at a minimum, competitive applicants pursue advanced placement or IB curricula, and they often mostly make A's and score over a 1400 on the SAT. Tens of thousands of international families also compete for these coveted 116,400 enrollment spaces. So the admissions madness is a global phenomenon in its scope. Many of the approximately 350,000 applicants will not receive any offers from top 50 universities, forcing them to enroll at their second or third choices, like Tulane, Miami, or their state's public flagship university. The possibility of rejection from everywhere means that it's critically important that all students have safety schools, but also what I call at least one security school where they're 100% guaranteed admission. On the other hand, universities seek and compete for the top 5% of the applicants aiming for elite universities, which represents around 13,000 to 20,000 of the most outstanding students worldwide. An even more rarefied tier of 1,000 or so of the most exceptional students around the world will have considerable national and international level achievements, often a unique story, and they may well get into some or all of the highly selective universities to which they apply. One of my clients alone gained admission to 12 of those top 45 universities, and he even felt guilty that those were 11 spaces that couldn't go to other students. And the problem, just like my student, is that nobody knows in advance that they are in the top, say, 1,000. And without any guarantees, they apply to 15 or 20 universities alongside their less competitive peers. And one of the weirdest outcomes of that student that got into like a dozen elite universities, they ended up enrolling at MIT, they got into Princeton, they got into the combined Brown, Rhode Island School of Design, combined major, they got into Amherst, but then they got rejected from comparatively less selective University of Southern California, so it's impossible to know in advance where one might gain or not gain admission. If one student could only gain admission to a single elite university, a broader pool of students would occupy the approximately 279,000 elite university admissions offers. That would also increase yield rates because you would have more of a closer match between students that have a top 1 or 2 choice and then gaining admission to their preferred school. I argue that reforms that decrease the ratio of admissions offers to enrollment spaces, which is currently at 2.4 per applicant, would signal a more efficient and potentially fair system. A plausible remedy for the inefficient distribution of spaces is admissions by a partial lottery, which is something that I'll discuss in a future video. During the class of 2025 pandemic admissions cycle, applications submitted to highly selective universities skyrocketed. Colgate famously doubled their application numbers from the previous year, and Harvard received 57,000 applications, an increase of 17,000 from the last cycle. Nevertheless, Harvard intended to enroll a freshman class of 1,700, despite most of their student body attending Zoom University. Widespread adoption of test optional policies and fee waivers for qualifying low-income students has not notably increased the number of first-generation students applying to college. Test optional policies, it seems, appear to be benefiting mediocre students at affluent high schools rather than increasing access for marginalized students. And these are reports that are coming out from both College Board and the Common Application and NACAD. The total number of applications submitted comes mostly from students living in college-going communities who are opting to go test optional. Despite intensive recruiting and outreach efforts, elite universities have failed in expanding the pool of potential applicants beyond predominantly wealthy families and communities. Students from affluent families and top high schools continue to crowd out spaces for everyone else. Common Application administrators recently issued alarm bells at the rising gap between who applies to and gains admissions at elite universities. Universities must do a better job at coordinating their admissions requirements, bringing transparency to their review process, and enrolling more students in general, which will also increase access and diversity for populations everywhere. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find my email in the information section of this video, so feel free to reach out if you're interested in working together.